अष्टोत्तरशतश्मन श्रील भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मन श्रील भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मन श्रील भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मन श्रील भक्ति विज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तरशतश्मन श्रील भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गोपाल वृंद की जय। नाम चय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट बरात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। श्री कार्तिक व्रत की जय। व्रत पालन करी भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री रामा अकारशी तिथि की जय। अकारशी तिथि पालन करी भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा दामोदर जू की जय। श्री उर्ज व्रत की जय। उर्जेश्वरी श्री विश्वभानुनंदिनी श्रीमती राधा ठाकुरानी की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि वो ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। न वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहावो पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सतं। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वं नायमां चरणान्तिकम्। भक्तविहीन अपराधलक्ष्य क्षेत्राष्टकामादितरङ्गमदे कृपामयि तं शरणं प्रपन्ना। Vande Namaste Charanarvindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right, 1 second. Okay, I'm just pulling up the ᴍᴍ-Bhāgavatam. All right. Okay, so today we will be reading about, the 2 previous days we read, verses 1 through 3 was the answer to 1 through 3 is the answer to the first question, Brahma's question about the jiva having material body. No, it was Parikshit Maharaj's question, right? Yes. And due to Maya, the soul feels connection with the body, suffers from suffers from the false conception of I and mine. But and then when he becomes free from such misconceptions, he becomes free from misconceptions when in touch with the Lord through bhakti. Then verses 4 to 8 was setting the platform for Brahma and for Brahma's conversation with the Lord. So Brahma could not find his source in the beginning of the creation, and then he heard the words tapa, which means austerities. And so then he underwent austerities for, how long did it say? Like thousands of years? And then, I think 1,000 celestial years. And then finally, Lord Brahma had darshan of Vaikuntha. And he saw the inhabitants of Vaikuntha, and the beauty and activities of the Lord, Lakshmi Devi, and all the other residents. And then, so that was all yesterday we read that. Let me just, okay. So, doesn't like me to scroll too fast. It freaks out when I do that. So I just have to go slowly. All right. So this is the darshan that Brahma had. The Lord was seated on his throne and was surrounded by different energies, like the 4, the 16, the 5, and the 6 natural opulences, along with other insignificant energies of temporary character. But he was the factual Supreme Lord, enjoying his own abode. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of Godhead in his fullness, was overwhelmed with joy in his heart, and thus in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears of love. He thus bowed down before the Lord. That is the way of the highest perfection for the living being, for the Paramahamsa. Okay. Tam priyamanam samupastitam kavim praja visarge nija shasanarhanam. My computer's being ridiculous. Okay. What the heck? I don't know why it did that. It just went back a ton of verses. This is so bizarre. Okay. Tam priyamanam samipastitam kavim praja visarge nija shasanarhanam babhasa ishat smita sochisha gira priya priyam prita mana kore sprishan. And seeing Brahma present before him, the Lord accepted him as worthy to create living beings, to be controlled as he desired, and thus being much satisfied with him, the Lord shook hands with Brahma, and, slightly smiling, addressed him thus. Purport. The creation of the material world is not blind or accidental. The living entities who are over-conditioned, or nitya-baddha, are thus given a chance for liberation under the guidance of his own representative like Brahma. The Lord instructs Brahma in Vedic knowledge in order to diffuse this knowledge to the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls are forgetful souls in their relationship with the Lord, and thus a period of creation and the process of dissemination of Vedic knowledge are necessary activities of the Lord. Lord Brahma has a great responsibility in delivering the conditioned souls, and therefore he is very dear to the Lord. Brahma also does his duty very perfectly, not only by generating the living entities, but also by spreading his party for reclaiming the fallen souls. The party is called Brahma Sampradaya, and any member of this party to date is naturally engaged in reclaiming the fallen souls back to Godhead, back home. The Lord is very much anxious to get back his parts and parcels, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. No one is more dear than the one who takes the task of reclaiming the fallen souls back to Godhead. There are many renegades from the Brahma Sampradaya, whose only business is to make men more forgetful of the Lord, and thus entangle them more and more in material existence. Such persons are never dear to the Lord, and the Lord sends them deeper into the darkest region of matter, so that such envious demons may not be able to know the Supreme Lord. Anyone, however, preaching the mission of the Lord in the line of the Brahma Sampradaya is always dear to the Lord, and the Lord, being satisfied with such a preacher of the authorized bhakti cult, shakes hands with him in great satisfaction. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Tvayaham Toshita Samyak Veda Garva Sisrikshaya Chiram Pritena Tapasa Dustosha Kutayoginam. The beautiful personality of Godhead addressed Lord Brahma. O Brahma, impregnated with the Vedas, I am very much pleased with your long accumulated penance with the desire for creation. Hardly I am pleased with the pseudo-mystics. Purport. There are two kinds of penance, one for sense gratification and the other for self-realization. There are many pseudo-mystics who undergo severe penances for their own satisfaction, and there are others who undergo severe penances for the satisfaction of the senses of the Lord. For example, the penances undertaken to discover nuclear weapons will never satisfy the Lord, because such a penance is never satisfactory. By nature's own way, everyone has to meet death, And if such a process of death is accelerated by anyone's penances, there is no satisfaction for the Lord. The Lord wants every one of his parts and parcels to attain eternal life and bliss by coming home to Godhead, and the whole material creation is meant for that objective. And Brahma underwent severe penances for that purpose, namely to regulate the process of creation so that the Lord might be satisfied. Therefore, the Lord was very much pleased with him, and for this, Brahma was impregnated with Vedic knowledge. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to know the Lord and not to misuse the knowledge for any other purposes. Those who do not utilize Vedic knowledge for that purpose are known as Kuta yogis, or pseudo-transcendentalists, who spoil their lives with ulterior motives. Parambaraya bhadram te varesha mabhivanchitam brahmang cheya parishrama pumsamar darshanavadi. I wish you good luck, O Brahma. You may ask for me, the giver of all benediction, all that you may desire. You may know that the ultimate benediction, as the result of all penances, is to see me by realization. Purport. The ultimate realization of the Supreme Truth is knowing and seeing face to face the personality of Godhead. Realization of the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma features of the personality of Godhead is not the ultimate realization. When one realizes the Supreme Lord, one does not struggle hard to perform such penances. The next stage of life is to discharge devotional service to the Lord just to satisfy him. In other words, one who has realized and seen the Supreme Lord has attained all perfection, because everything is included in that highest perfectional stage. The impersonalists and the pseudo-mystics, however, cannot reach this state. Manishita nubhavoya mamaloka valokanam yarupa shrutarahase chakarta paramam tapa. The highest perfectional ingenuity is this personal perception of my abodes, and this has been possible because of your submissive attitude in the performance of severe penance according to my order. The highest perfectional stage of life is to know the Lord by actual perception, by the grace of the Lord. This can be attained by everyone who is willing to discharge the act of devotional service to the Lord as enjoined in the revealed scriptures that are standard and accepted by the bona fide acharyas, spiritual masters. For example, Bhagavad Gita is the approved Vedic literature accepted by all the great acharyas, such as Shankar, Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Vishwanath, Baladev, Siddhanta Saraswati, and many others. In that Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, asks that one always be mindful of him, always be his devotee, always worship him only, and always bow down before the Lord. And by doing so, one is sure to go back home, back to Godhead, without any doubt. In other places, also the same order is there, that one give up all other engagements and fully surrender unto the Lord without hesitation. And the Lord will give such a devotee all protection. These are all the secrets of attaining the highest perfectional stage. Lord Brahma exactly followed these principles without any superiority complex, and thus he attained the highest perfectional stage of experience. Maya tatra tvatmaham tapaso naga. O sinless Brahma, you may know from me that it was I who first ordered you to undergo penance when you are perplexed in your duty. Such penance is my heart and soul, and therefore penance and I are non-different. Purport. The penance by which one can see the personality of Godhead face to face is to be understood as devotional service to the Lord and nothing else, because only by discharging devotional service in transcendental love can one approach the Lord. Such penance is the internal potency of the Lord and is non-different from Him. Such acts of internal potency are exhibited by the non-attachment for material enjoyment. The living entities are encaged in the conditions of material bondage because of their propensity for overlordship. But by engagement in the devotional service of the Lord, one becomes detached from this enjoying spirit. The devotees automatically become detached from worldly enjoyments, and this detachment is the result of perfect knowledge. Therefore, the penance of devotional service includes knowledge and detachment, and that is the manifestation of the transcendental potency. One cannot enjoy material illusory prosperity if he desires to return back home, back to Godhead. One who has no information of the transcendental bliss in the association of the Lord foolishly desires to enjoy this temporary material happiness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that if someone sincerely wants to see the Lord and at the same time wants to enjoy this material world, he is considered to be a fool only. One who wants to remain here in the material world for material enjoyment has no business entering into the eternal kingdom of God. The Lord favors such a foolish devotee by snatching all that he may possess in the material world. If such a foolish devotee of the Lord tries to recoup his position, then the merciful Lord again snatches away all that he may have possessed. By such repeated failures in material prosperity, he becomes very unpopular with his family members and friends. In the material world, the family members and friends honor persons who are very successful in accumulating wealth by any means. The foolish devotee of the Lord is thus put into forcible penance by the grace of the Lord, and at the end, the devotee becomes perfectly happy, being engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, penance and devotional service of the Lord, either by voluntary submission or by being forced by the Lord, is necessary for attaining perfection, and thus such penance is the internal potency of the Lord. One cannot, however, be engaged in the penance of devotional service without being completely free from all sins. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, only a person who is completely free from all reactions of sins can engage himself in the worship of the Lord. Brahmāji was sinless, and therefore he faithfully discharged the advice of the Lord, tapa, tapa, and the Lord, being satisfied with him, awarded him the desired result. Therefore, only love and penance combined can please the Lord, and thus one is able to attain his complete mercy. He directs the sinless, and the sinless devotee attains the highest perfection of life. Srijami tapasai vedam, grasami tapasa puna, bibharmi tapasa vishvam, virya me dushcharam tapa. I create this cosmos by such penance. I maintain it by the same energy, and I withdraw it by the same energy. Therefore, the potential power is penance only. In purport, in executing penance, one must be determined to return home back to Godhead, and one must decide to undergo all types of tribulations for that end. Even for material prosperity, name, and fame, one has to undergo severe types of penance. Otherwise, no one can become an important figure in this material world. Why then are there severe types of penance for the perfection of devotional service? An easygoing life and attainment of perfection and transcendental realization cannot go together. That's great. An easygoing life and an attainment of perfection and transcendental realization cannot go together. The Lord is more clever than any living entity. Therefore, he wants to see how painstaking the devotee is in devotional service. The order is received from the Lord either directly or through the bona fide spiritual master. And to execute that order, however painstaking, is the severe type of penance. One who follows the principle rigidly is sure to achieve success in attaining the Lord's mercy. Brahmā vacha Bhagavan sarvabhutanam adhyaksho vastito guham vedahya pratirudena pragyanena chikirshitam. What verse is that? That is 24. Okay, I want to go back to that. I like that. Brahmavacha Bhagavan Sarvabhutanam Adhyaksho Vasito Goyam Vedahya Pratirudena Pratigyanena Chikirshitam. Lord Brahma said, O personality of Godhead, you are situated in every living entity's heart as a supreme dictator, and therefore you are aware of all endeavors by your superior intelligence, without any hindrance whatsoever. Purport. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, and as such he is the supreme director of sanction. The director is not the enjoyer of the fruits of action, for without the Lord's sanction, no one can enjoy. For example, in a prohibited area, a habituated drunkard puts forward his application to the director of drinking, and the director, considering his case, sanctions only a certain amount of liquor for drinking. Similarly, the whole material world is full of many drunkards, in the sense that each and every one of the living entities has something in his mind to enjoy, and everyone desires the fulfillment of his desires very strongly. The Almighty Lord, being very kind to the living entity, as the Father is kind to the Son, fulfills the living entity's desire for his childish satisfaction. With such desires in mind, the living entity does not actually enjoy, but he serves the bodily whims unnecessarily, without profit. The drunkard does not derive any profit out of drinking, but because he has become a servant of the drinking habit and does not wish to get out of it, the merciful Lord gives him all facilities to fulfill such desires. The impersonalist recommends that one should become desireless, and others recommend banishing desires altogether. That is impossible. No one can banish desires altogether, because desiring is the living symptom. Without having desires, a living entity would be dead, which he is not. Therefore, living conditions and desire go together. Perfection of desires may be achieved when one desires to serve the Lord, and the Lord also desires that every living entity banish all personal desires and cooperate with his desires. That is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji agreed to this proposal, and therefore he is given the responsible post of creating generations in the vacant universe. Oneness with the Lord therefore consists of dovetailing one's desires with the desires of the Supreme Lord. That makes for the perfection of all desires. The Lord, as the supersoul in the heart of every living being, knows what is in the mind of each living entity, and no one could do anything without the knowledge of the Lord within. By his superior intelligence, the Lord gives everyone the chance to fulfill his desire to the fullest extent, and the resultant reaction is also awarded by the Lord. Tatapi natamanasya natanataya natitam paravareyata rupe janiyam tetvarupina. In spite of that, my Lord, I am praying to you kindly to fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. Yatatma maya yogena nana shakti upabrimhitam vilumpam visrijangrenan pribhradatmanamatmana. And please inform me how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. Purports. The whole manifestation is the Lord himself by diffusion of his different energies only, namely the internal, external, and marginal, just as the sunlight is the manifestation of the energy of the sun planet. Such energy is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, just as the sunshine is simultaneously one with and different from the sun planet. The energies are acting by the combination and permutation by the indication of the Lord, and acting like agents like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are also different incarnations of the Lord. In other words, there is nothing but the Lord, and still the Lord is different from all such manifestive activities. How it is so will be explained later on. Kridasya moga sankalpa urnana bhiryatornute tatatar vishayang tehi manisha mai madhava. O Master of all energies, please tell me philosophically all about them. You play like a spider that covers itself by its own energy, and your determination is infallible. Purport. By the inconceivable energy of the Lord, every creative element has its own potencies, known as the potency of the element, potency of knowledge, and the potency of different actions and reactions. By a combination of such potential energies of the Lord, there is the manifestation of creation, maintenance, and annihilation in due course of time, and by different agents like Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. Brahma creates, Vishnu maintains, and Lord Shiva destroys. But all such agents and creative energies are the emanations from the Lord, and as such there is nothing except the Lord, or the one supreme source of different diversities. The exact example is the spider and the spider's web. The web is created by the spider, and it is maintained by the spider, and as soon as the spider likes, the whole thing is wound up within the spider. The spider is covered within the web. If an insignificant spider is so powerful as to act according to its will, why can't the Supreme Being act by his supreme will in the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the cosmic manifestations? By the grace of the Lord, a devotee like Brahma, or one in his chain of disciplic succession, can understand the almighty personality of Godhead eternally, engaged in its transcendental pastimes and the region of different energies. Bhagavat shikshitam aham karavani hyatandrita nehamana praja sargam badeyam yad anugrahat. Please tell me so that I may be taught in the matter by the instruction of the personality of Godhead, and may thus act instrumentally to generate living entities without being conditioned by such activities. Purport. Brahmaji does not want to become a speculator dependent on the strength of his own personal knowledge and conditioned to material bondage. Everyone should know in clear consciousness that one is, in the execution of all activities, an instrument. A conditioned soul is instrumental in the hands of the external energy. Guna Mayi Maya are the illusory energy of the Lord. And in the liberated stage, the living entity is instrumental to the will of the personality of Godhead directly. To be instrumental to the direct will of the Lord is the natural constitutional position of the living entity, whereas to be an instrument in the hands of the illusory energy of the Lord is material bondage for the living entity. In that conditioned state, the living entity speculates on the absolute truth and his different activities. But in the unconditioned stage, the living entity directly receives knowledge from the Lord, and such a liberated soul acts flawlessly, without any speculative habit. The Bhagavad Gita 10:10-11 confirms emphatically that the pure devotees who are constantly engaged in the loving transcendental service of the Lord are directly advised by the Lord, so much so that the devotee unwaveringly makes progress on the path home, back to Godhead. Pure devotees of the Lord are therefore not proud of their definite progress, whereas the non-devotee speculator is in the darkness of illusory energy and is very much proud of his misleading knowledge based on speculation without any definite path. Lord Brahma wanted to be saved from that pitfall of pride, although he was posted in the most exalted position within the universe. Okay, we're going to end with this verse. Yavat sakasakyo riveshate krita praja visarge vibhajami bhojanam aviklavaste parikarmani stito mame samunadha maidoja manina. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I'm just curious, what the shaking hands is, the Sanskrit. Sakya eva ishate kritak satyapajya sage bhojana avipada. Anyhow, I don't see the word shaking hands. I'll look in the previous verses later. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation. But I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. That's really nice. He's praying that this is really instructional for us. Purport. Lord Brahma is definitely situated in the humor of friendship with the Lord. Every living being is eternally related with the personality of Godhead and one of the 5 transcendental humors, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. We have already discussed these 5 kinds of humors in relationship with the personality of Godhead. It is clearly exhibited herein that Lord Brahma is related to the personality of Godhead and the transcendental humor of friendship. A pure devotee may be related with the Lord in any one of the transcendental humors, even in the humor of parenthood. But the devotee of the Lord is always a transcendental servitor. No one is equal to or greater than the Lord. That is the version of the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji, although eternally related with the Lord in the transcendental humor of friendship, and although entrusted with the most exalted post of creating different grades of living entities, is still conscious of his position, that he is neither the Supreme Lord nor supremely powerful. It is possible that some extremely powerful personality within or without the universe may sometimes show more power than the Lord himself. Still, the pure devotee knows that this power is a vibhuti delegated by the Lord, and such a delegated, powerful living entity is never independent. Sri Hanumanji crossed the Indian Ocean by jumping over the sea, and the Lord Sri Ramachandra engaged himself in marching over the bridge. But this does not mean that Hanumanji was more powerful than the Lord. Sometimes the Lord gives extraordinary powers to his devotee. But the devotee knows always that the power belongs to the personality of Godhead, and that the devotee is only an instrument. The pure devotee is never puffed up like the non-devotee class of men who falsely think that they are God. It is astonishing to see how a person is being kicked by the laws of the Lord's illusory energy at every step. How a person who is being kicked by the laws of illusory energy at every step can falsely think of becoming one with the Lord. Such thinking is the last snare of the illusory energy offered to the conditioned soul. The first illusion is that he wants to become the Lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power. But when he is frustrated in that attempt, he wants to be one with the Lord. So both becoming the most powerful man in the material world and desiring to become one with the Lord are different illusory snares. And because the pure devotees of the Lord are surrendered souls, they are above the illusory snares of Maya. Because Lord Brahma is a pure devotee, even though the first dominating deity in the material world, and therefore able to do many wonderful things, he would never, like the non-devotee with the forefront of knowledge, have the audacity to think of becoming one with the Lord. People with the forefront of knowledge should take lessons from Brahma when they are puffed up with the false notion of becoming God. Factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. At the beginning of the creation, he is empowered to give different bodily shapes to the living entities according to their work during the last millennium. Brahmaji's duty is just to wake up the living entities from their slumber and to engage them in their proper duty. The different grades of the living entities are not created by Brahmaji by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of body so that they can work accordingly. And still he is conscious that he is only instrumental, so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful Lord. Devotees of the Lord are engaged in a specific duty offered by the Lord, and such duties are successfully carried out without hindrance, because they are ordained by the Lord. The credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. But persons with a poor fund of knowledge take credit of the success into their own accounts and give nothing to the credit of the Lord. This is a symptom of the non-devotee class of men. Alright, so that's where we're reading up today. Text 30, and tomorrow we will read, the Lord will speak Chatushloki, the 4 seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he concludes the Chatushloki and then disappears. And then it talks about Brahma's recreation of the universe, qualities of Narad and his questions about Maya to Brahma, and the Parampara of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Brahma Narad Vyasadeva. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, oh Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhari Giridhari, Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govana Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad, Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Shila Gurudev Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad, Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad, Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad, Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad, Ashtatarashatashmad Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Shila Bhakshiras Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Shila Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Rupana Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Padadash Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shada Vrinda Ki Jai, Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Braja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sarva Abhishya Bharata Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai, Radha Kun Shama Kuni Munagal Mathosi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Shri Radha Damodar Ju Ki Jai, Shri Damodar Vrat Kartik Vrat Urja Vrat Ki Jai, Urjeshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki Jai, Shri Rama Akadashi Titi Ki Jai, Akadashi Titi Palankari Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shinitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य च कृष्ण भक्ति पद देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः वंशा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Dandavad pranams. Hari Bol. Thank you for joining.